So the news, yes, I'm going to have to look behind me to work out what's going on. As ever, let's start with where you would find news pertaining to Meteor, were you to look for it yourself. The best places are in the Meteor forums, the official forums at forums.meteor.com. The blog, where important things which are going on are announced. Meteor Weekly is probably the best regular roundup. It's not weekly at all, I'll be honest, but it is quite regular. And it's worth following the people involved on Facebook, on Twitter, because they will advise when the next edition is out, and all the important stuff that's going on is also listed in there, so it's a good digest. And then Transmission is this podcast and sometimes videocast, where people talk about Meteor. They have really good access to MDG core developers, so they get kind of the news from right from the source of what's going on and what the future plans are. So it's really worth listening to when they release episodes. History.md, this is also a really, really interesting place to look. This is on the official Meteor repo, the GitHub repo. It's a file that records what's in every release, including what's in the upcoming release. So you can see what's going to be released, what's about to hit public beta, and what you're going to have to play with in the future. It's also a record of when you can see when things were released, at what stage and on what date. So yeah, it's a fascinating document, and if you're wondering about the future direction of Meteor in the short term, it's the best place to look. And you, obviously, we're going to labour this point, as we do every month. You are generating news because you're doing stuff with Meteor, hopefully, and so we want to hear from you and hear about what it is that you're doing. More on that later. Yes, very important. So what have we got? So Meteor has now hit version 1.4.2 since last we met. The highlights of version 1.4.2, so the main headline is faster rebuilds. So this is something, if you've got a really large Meteor app, then hot code reloading is great, but when your rebuild takes 15 or 20 seconds, it's not that great, and it makes developing a progressively more frustrating experience. So MDG have been doing a lot of work on speeding that up. I haven't got any benchmarks or anything to tell you how much faster it is, but the anecdotes that you read in the forums are that it's a significant improvement, so 3 or 4 times, something like that, which is great. So it just makes it a more satisfactory development experience, and obviously, if you can optimize this stuff, it means you're doing things better than you were before, because they shouldn't have taken that long. NPM is upgraded to 3.10.9. But it does apparently work with Yarn. If you're not aware of what Yarn is, it is the primarily Facebook, but also various other enormous company-backed NPM competitor, which is kind of a drop-in replacement for NPM. I haven't used it extensively because it doesn't allow you to just globally install stuff anywhere, but apparently it works with Meteor as well.
Is there a Meteor Yarn like there is a Meteor NPM?
Not yet, no, as far as I understand. But, well, that's a good question. So I've not tried it. They haven't documented the fact there's a Meteor Yarn, which leads me to conclude that there isn't. But you could always NPM install stuff. The problem with that being that you might install it with a different version of Node than your Meteor app is running. So you'd have to, subject to that concern. There's no reason you can't just Yarn add whatever it is you want to add. And it would work in exactly the same way. I've not tried it, but apparently it works with Yarn if you're suddenly in love with Yarn, which some people are. And Blaze, the other big news is that Blaze is now a separate package. This was the only original view engine that shipped with Meteor before people added ways to connect other view layers. And that's now a separate package, so it's even though it's been possible to use React or Angular or whatever you want for quite a long period of time, Blaze is now very officially not part of the core repo anymore. And the repercussions of that I will discuss in a second. The roadmap that we discuss every month is quite difficult to discuss because there's also a roadmap document in the repo. It's not been updated in 4 months, and the highlights that are on there are stuff like upgrading Node to version 4, which has happened, upgrading MongoDB to 3.2, which has happened. What else is in there? Stuff that's happened, stuff that's definitely already, native support for ES6 modules, which has happened. So this is all great. These kind of huge steps that Meteor had to take have all been taken, but it's not clear what the future direction is. When I've got a question mark there, that's not a question mark over the future of Meteor, it's a question over the future direction, because it's not totally clear what needs to happen. A year or a year and a half ago, there were loads of things, and it was a case of trying to establish what the community's priorities were in terms of what they wanted to get fixed or added in terms of features next, and that's much less the case. So it's quite difficult to answer that question. I don't know what the roadmap is. I don't know what's going to come in version 1.5. We're just going to have to wait and see. Alan?
Do you know if you can plug in different databases yet?
We're going to come to that. Don't you worry.
Right.
I think there was a, sorry, I think there was a message about 1.5 that it was going to include some shape or form an Apollo integration.
Well, so the Apollo is the big news. Thank you, sir. No, not at all. I put the slide up anyway, so it's fine. Yeah, the big news from MDG is that their other project that's on the go, well, one of their other major projects on the go is Apollo, which the best way of describing it is like a generalization of Meteor's view layer. GraphQL is this system for client-server communication, which is coming out of Facebook, and it makes lots of things which are painful in, for example, a REST API, much less painful, much more flexible for a faster and happier development experience. And Apollo is a kind of series of packages that sit on top of that. There's some helpers for the server, but your server could be in Node or a Meteor application, and they've built some stuff to help you make GraphQL servers, but it could also be in Go or Python or Java or whatever. So the real work they've done is on the client side and facilitate integration with Meteor, so your Meteor front end, or a more general React front end, React Native, Angular, Android, iOS. There are packages and documentation to help you integrate Apollo, which uses GraphQL in all these different ways. So it's really a kind of generalization of the data layer, which was the one thing that the number one Meteor's most incredible feature, because live data, the first time any of us saw it, was phenomenal. All of a sudden you could, with really only a few lines of code, develop an app where somebody could type something on one machine and it would appear in whatever format you wanted on another machine. It's phenomenal, but it's also tied to Mongo database, and your ability to use that kind of live data system to kind of push the bounds of the live data system have always been limited. Apollo allows you much more flexibility in terms of how live it is. That's something that's being developed actively. The concept of subscriptions has been available for, I think, about a month and a half now, which means that your server can push stuff to the client as well as the client just requesting it like it would a REST API. So kind of we're making steps towards a kind of completely live environment, but an environment in which your data source on the back end could be anything, any database, or a feed from the Internet of Things, or another API that you're calling out to, or whatever you want. And obviously the complexity is going to be greater than your Hello World Meteor app, but if you read the documentation, it's not difficult to get set up with Apollo, and it's fantastic technology. And to give an indication of, number one, how well, if you follow what the core devs are doing, it's fair to say that basically all their time is spent on Apollo, so the MDG are clearly taking it very seriously. And it's got a lot of traction. We had Yuri Goldstein here last month from MDG, and he was in London because he'd just spoken at NGConf. Is it NG? I think it's called NGConf, the massive Angular conference. And in their keynote, they were talking about the data layer in your Angular app, and the first icon they had was Apollo. So the entire Angular community is basically really excited about Apollo. If you think about the Meteor world, it's pretty big, but if everybody that uses Angular is excited about it, and probably everybody that uses React and so on, this is obviously a hugely scalable and interesting product. So yeah, they've actually also just changed the URLs of all three of these things, the website, the docs, and the blog, but it's really easy to find. Anyway, so the key thing is, this is a fascinating technology. The things that are cool about Meteor are cool about Apollo, but you can use your own view layer, your own backend, and it's much more generalized. So that's what I'm excited about at the moment, it's fair to say. Community, so that's you and many other people. What's going on? Apollo London, right, this is the first thing. Apollo London now exists in that it's a meetup. It's on meetup.com. We've got 39 members, and Meteor London's got 2,039 members. So that means there's exactly 2,000 people in London who like Meteor, who are yet to discover that they like Apollo. So if any of you are amongst their number, we want you to join the Apollo meetup. group. There aren't any meetups organised yet, but we really want to kick this off because basically Meteor's awesome. We love using it. We've got client apps that are really cool that use Meteor, and we see every month people like Babak demonstrate their apps. But it's now, as indicated by the fact that the roadmap is so vague, it's now like a mature technology. People are building production grade stuff and it works really nicely and it looks really cool, which is fantastic to see. But gone are the days that, 2.5 years ago, people were doing demos of like API bits that had just come out and were like, oh, I started playing with this and this happened, and they hadn't even styled it or anything like that. And that was kind of quite exciting because people just hacking around and doing stuff and finding out what could be done. And the Apollo meetup is an opportunity to get back to that, where the benchmark for what's acceptable to present is 0, because nobody's ever presented anything. So if you come to the first meetup when it's announced and present something, it'll be better than what we've already seen. And yeah, we're really keen for people to get involved, to create a community, because I think we can all learn from each other like we did with Meteor, and in 2 years from now, everybody will be using Apollo in their production apps and really like it and know lots about it. So that's the main thing that you can do from a community perspective.
Excuse me, do you have any tentative dates for this meetup?
I don't, but feel free to suggest when you think a good date would be. Yeah, but I'll put the ways we could be contacted. I mean, you know how to contact us anyway. But yeah, we're really keen for people if people show enthusiasm and say, oh, it'd be great if you could do one around this time. Like, we've only got 39 people in the meetup group, which is a bit early to start organising stuff. But when we get more people and there is some obvious demand, we'll do a meetup, because that's why we started the group. We really want to do it. It's just difficult to have a meetup without some people, because that's the whole meetup. That's what it means. You have joined, right? Well, he's got a gold star. Help yourself to another beer, sir. Project governance. So I'd kind of touched on this before. It's fairly obvious that not because they don't care, or because not because they don't care, but MDG are leaving the kind of stewardship of their kind of add-on packages, stuff like React, Angular, Blaze integrations to the community, largely because stuff doesn't really need doing. Like, they all work. Blaze for quite a long time has been pretty fully featured and it's worked really well. But it does mean that if you use these, it does mean that people in the community are going to be taking a very active role in maintaining these packages and developing them where that is necessary. If you want to do that, that's great. If you're maintaining an open source project and people just complain about stuff that doesn't work, it's really exhausting. So the best thing you can do if you have projects that are using Blaze, for example, is offer to help if it's just fixing the docs or whatever it is, the smallest bug fix. That can be really helpful, and at the very least show some appreciation that you're using it. And if people are kind of releasing patches when no changes or whatever's required, that it works well and that you appreciate it, because it's not going to be people who are paid to support this stuff by and large who are going to be doing so in the future. That's not to suggest they're going to fall apart. I'm sure MTG is not going to allow that. They don't really need much work, but the people that are going to be doing the work are from the community. So yeah, get it. It's a great way to get involved in open source as well if you want to. Anything else? Oh yes. So we've been doing some work recently with another co-op called Outlandish, who are a bit bigger than us, and yeah, they're hiring. I happen to know, so I said I'd mention it. They're looking for a senior dev. I think actually they might be looking for other people as well. And they're really nice. They're looking for people who are interested in the cooperative movement as well. They're very egalitarian, based in Finsbury Park. If you think it could be vaguely interesting, then check them out. But they're really nice people. So our interaction with them has been all good. And yeah, what's your news? So anything that you've got to contribute, please let us know, or do a lightning talk on it in like half an hour. And I think that's it. Oh yeah, get in touch. The best place to speak to us is either by raising an issue on the Meteor London repo, the next repo under Meteor London, or there's the Gitter channel as well. There's a Meteor London Gitter channel, which we're kind of always loitering in. And that's it.